Narrated by Michael Harris. The first remember exactly where I was when everything started to unravel my office at Jefferson High. Late Thursday afternoon. I had just finished reviewing proposals for the new community mentorship program when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Oregon area code. Hello, this is Alan Monroe from Cascade Union Bank. I'm calling to verify some mortgage details connected to your name. At first I thought it was a scam. I'm sorry, there's been a mistake. I haven't applied for any loans, I said. That's odd, he replied, because your name, Michael Harris, is listed as a co-signer for a property at 4312 Meadow Lane. Primary applicant, David Harris. Would that be your brother? I went cold. I hadn't spoken to David in months. We were never exactly close, but we'd grown up under the same roof, shared bunk beds, birthdays, Sunday pancakes. Still, the idea that my name was on a mortgage, his mortgage without me knowing? No, that couldn't be right. There must be an error, I said again, but this time my voice cracked. The banker continued, polite but firm. All the documentation was submitted 7 months ago. Your signature appears on the paperwork. And there's another issue. Payments are more than 2 months overdue. The current balance is $17,800. My pen fell out of my hand and rolled onto the floor. I couldn't speak. After the call, I sat in silence. The sun outside had dipped low, turning my office a dull amber. The framed photo of my staff at last year's retreat suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else, someone with a clean life and no secrets stitched behind their back. I called Sarah. She was the only person who knew how to deal with situations like this, and more importantly, the only person I trusted not to react with disbelief. They forged my signature, I said as soon as she picked up. There was a pause. Then her voice came, low and steady. I'm coming over. By the time Sarah walked into my office, I had already received the email from Alan at the bank. Attached were 6 documents: loan applications, credit checks, co-signer declarations, each one with my name, each one bearing my signature, except it wasn't mine. It looked like mine, sure, but it was too neat, too confident. And the M in Michael curved just like my dad's handwriting when he used to sign my school absence slips back in 5th grade. I passed the laptop across the desk to Sarah. She stared at the screen for a full minute before speaking. They didn't even try to hide it. I didn't respond. My hands were clenched under the desk, nails digging into my palms. The shame wasn't just from what they'd done. It was from how easy it was for them, how natural it must have felt to take what was mine, assuming I'd never notice or never fight back. They forged my name for a loan, I said, more to myself than to her. Sarah leaned back in the chair. They didn't stop at a mortgage, Michael. I ran a soft pull on your credit file through my firm's system. She pulled up another document. You've got 3 credit cards opened in your name, all maxed out combined limits. Nearly $70,000. I blinked. What? One of them was used to book a trip to Cabo. Another's got charges from some luxury boutique in San Francisco. David's girlfriend posted a picture from Cabo in December. My voice trailed off. The puzzle pieces had been there all along. I just hadn't realized I was the picture they'd been building. Sarah nodded grimly. And there's more. There's a $50,000 personal loan from an out-of-state lender and a business account registered in your name, something called Harris Horizon Holdings. I don't own a business. They know that. I stood up. Pacing helped, though barely. So what's the total damage? She sighed, tapping her pen against the table. Conservatively, around $290,000. And that's without checking international assets or investment activity. We need a full forensic trace. I'm a school principal, Sarah, I muttered. My whole job depends on integrity. If the board finds out about any of this, they won't. Not if we move fast. I stared at the wall behind her, the old framed certificate from my teaching days in Oregon City. I used to think hard work and a good name could carry you through anything. But what do you do when your own family turns your name into a weapon? Sarah put a hand on my arm. Michael, the first know this hurts, but you've got one thing on your side that they don't truth, and it's time we use it. The last time I had dinner at my parents' house, there had been wine, a crossword puzzle on the kitchen counter, and David talking about his next big move, while our mother made her usual lemon rosemary chicken. It had felt almost normal, but now, normal was a ghost I could no longer chase. This time, I walked into that same house, holding a folder thick with evidence, every forged signature, every fraudulent credit account, every lie wrapped in my name. Sarah had printed it all, organized it with tabs like a legal exhibit. I wasn't just confronting them, I was prosecuting them. The house looked the same. Too much so. The tan rug Dad had refused to replace. The wall of photos where David's graduation portrait hung in the center like a crown jewel. The same kitchen towels Mom had embroidered with family first. I nearly laughed. They were already sitting at the table when I walked in. David looked tired. His eyes were rimmed red, and he couldn't meet mine. My father stood behind the stove, stirring spaghetti sauce, pretending not to notice the storm walking through the front door. And my mother, Ruth, rose from the couch with an overly rehearsed smile. Michael, she said, her voice light, like we'd just bumped into each other at a grocery store. You're here early. Dinner's almost ready. I didn't answer. I placed the folder on the dining table with a sharp thud and sat down. David flinched at the sound. What's that? Mom asked, frowning. Copies, I said, of everything. Mortgage documents, credit card statements, loan applications. All in my name, none with my permission. Dad turned from the stove. Michael, sit down, I cut in. I wasn't raising my voice, but the edge in it was something I barely recognized as my own. He hesitated, then sat across from me. I know, I said quietly. I know everything. And what I don't know, I'll find out soon. Silence dropped over the table like a curtain. David broke first. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stared at him. Didn't mean to what, David? Take out a $180,000 mortgage with my name as your co-signer? Use my social security number to open 3 maxed-out credit cards? Collateralize a loan using an investment account I never authorized? I was going to pay it back, he whispered, as if that mattered. I pulled out a highlighted section of his boutique spending. Last month you spent $8,500 at a resort spa and nearly $4,000 in designer shoes. What exactly were you investing in? A lifestyle you couldn't afford? David sank lower in his chair. My mother finally spoke. He just needed a little help, Michael. You've always been the responsible one. You have the job, the credit score, the stability. So that made me the logical target? I said. Not the sibling, not the son, not the person you raised. Just the safest financial bet. Mom's lip trembled. We didn't want to hurt you. No, I said. You just didn't want to ask. Because you knew I'd say no. Dad leaned forward, trying to regain authority. You're overreacting. This is family business. Families help each other. That's not help, I said, my voice rising for the first time. That's identity theft. That's a federal crime. He opened his mouth, but Sarah's advice echoed in my mind. Don't let them bait you into guilt. Speak only to facts. So I reached into the folder again and pulled out another document. There's also a business loan, Harris Horizon Holdings. I never formed that company, but someone used my credentials to do it. David looked like he might vomit. I checked the IP log, I continued. The application came from this address. I only did what Mom asked, he muttered. My mother gasped. David. No, I said, turning to her. Let him speak. For once, let someone in this family be honest. David was trembling now. I didn't know it was going to escalate. Mom said it would be temporary, just to get the house. But then Dad needed money for that investment group. And you were doing so well. She said you wouldn't notice. My father stood up sharply, knocking over a chair. This is ridiculous. You're going to ruin this family over a few mistakes? No, I said, standing too. You did that the day you decided to risk my career, my reputation, my financial future without even asking. Mom reached for my hand. Michael, please. If you go through with this, David could go to prison. Your father, he's not in good health. I'm not doing this out of anger. I said, backing away. I'm doing this because if I don't, you'll do it again. To me, to someone else. Because you think love is an excuse for betrayal. The word betrayal hit the room like a slap. My mother crumbled into her seat. My father stood frozen. And David just cried. I walked to the door. Tomorrow, I said, I'm filing a report with the State Financial Crimes Division. I've already contacted a lawyer. This is no longer just a family matter, Mom called out. We're still your parents. I turned, voice cold. Then you should have acted like it. And I left. 3 days after I walked out of my parents' house, I was sitting across from Daniel Fields, our firm's financial forensics specialist, in a quiet office downtown. He had 2 screens open, both filled with dense spreadsheets and tabbed reports. Michael, he said after a long pause, this is bigger than we thought. I leaned forward. How big? He clicked over to a new window, revealing a flow chart of transaction paths, flag names, and account numbers. I've been tracing wire activity connected to that company, Harris Horizon Holdings. There's no physical address, no employees, but there's an influx of funds labeled under an entity called Riverline Growth Fund. Never heard of it, I said. You wouldn't have, because it doesn't exist, not legally. He tapped the screen again, zooming in on a name. My name. They used your identity as the fund manager. That gave it legitimacy. I even found a Gmail address, michael.tatengajmail.com. 1 character off your real email. I felt my stomach drop. They forged my emails? Yes. They used your title as a school administrator to make the fund seem credible. Promised fixed returns to investors. Claimed the fund supported educational development projects. I was stunned. Who invested? Daniel opened another file, then turned his laptop toward me. A spreadsheet. Rows of names. Familiar names. Helen Warner. She taught English at Jefferson when I started as vice principal. Ben Torres. My father's golf buddy from the Ridgeway Club. Elise Mitchell. My mother's sorority sister. She used to babysit me. How much money are we talking about? Over $5 million passed through at least 4 intermediary accounts, including 1 flagged offshore in Luxembourg. I stood up and backed away from the desk, my mind spiraling. They didn't just steal from me. They stole through me. Daniel nodded. Your parents, mostly your father and your brother, used your spotless profile as the bait. It's classic affinity fraud. They targeted people who trusted you. I sat back down, the weight of it settling in like wet cement. Do any of them know? Not yet. They'll find out soon, though. Especially now that the accounts have been flagged by the federal banking network. A sharp knock interrupted us. Sarah stepped in, holding her phone. We just got word from Hallage Bank. Your father and a man named Marvin Klein tried to withdraw $200,000 from one of the flagged accounts. System locked them out and froze the funds. They're panicking. Good. I didn't say it aloud, but I felt it deep and still like a stone dropping in the gut. They knew exactly what they were doing, I said, and they didn't care who else they brought down with them. Sarah nodded. That's why we need to keep moving. Daniel and I are preparing a full package for the Federal Investigation Office. We'll need to include any personal devices that may have been compromised, your laptop, your home router, just in case they installed keyloggers. I swallowed hard. Last month, my mom borrowed my laptop, said she was checking her Gmail. Sarah's jaw clenched. That might have been how they got access to your credentials. And David, he stayed late in my office on my birthday. He brought me cupcakes. Daniel turned back to his screen. That same night, there was a login attempt from your district admin portal from their home IP. That's our link. I rubbed my face with both hands. They weren't careless, they were calculated, which makes this prosecutable, Sarah added. This isn't just fraud, it's premeditated financial crime, using fabricated credentials to exploit a known social network. It could carry a multi-decade sentence. I looked at her. They'll try to spin it. They always do. Say it was a misunderstanding. Say it was just to help David. We won't let them control the narrative, Sarah said firmly. And you won't be alone. I nodded slowly, still absorbing it all. Then Daniel spoke again. There's someone you need to talk to. He stepped out for a moment and returned with an older woman in a beige coat. Her face was tired, but familiar. Michael, she said quietly. Helen, Miss Warner. The first stood to shake her hand. I trusted your parents, she said, voice trembling. Your mother showed me those emails. She said it was your initiative, an educational investment fund to support underprivileged schools. I put in my entire retirement savings. I thought I was helping you. I had no words. I don't want your money back, she added, eyes glossy. I just wanted to look you in the eye and ask, was it really you? No, I said. It wasn't. She took a breath, nodding once. Then do what you have to do. I'll support you. That moment, her forgiveness, her strength meant more to me than anything my real family had given in months. Later that night, Sarah, Daniel, and I sat in the conference room at the law office. On the whiteboard were sticky notes with names, amounts, timelines, a crime map, and right in the center, circled in red, was my name. How much time do we have? I asked. Sarah glanced at her watch. Not much. Once they realize they've lost control, they'll try to move the money elsewhere. Then we do it now, I said. All of it. Report submission, account freezes, arrest warrants if needed. Let's stop this before anyone else gets hurt. Daniel slid the final report across the table. Ready when you are, I signed. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had taken something back. The morning I walked into Hallage Bank with Sarah and Daniel, the air had the weight of a verdict. The moment we stepped through the glass doors, the receptionist straightened and called the branch manager. Mr. Harris, she said. Mr. Delaney will be right with you. Frank Delaney appeared a few moments later. Tall, composed, but clearly uneasy. He greeted us with a cautious smile and led us into a side conference room. I met with your parents earlier this morning, he began. They claim you're trying to smear their name. Your brother. He said this was all a misunderstanding. Sarah set the file folder on the table like a gavel. Then you'll want to look through this, she said. Every fraudulent account, forged signature, IP log, bank trail, and false email linked to Michael Harris, including funds laundered through a fictitious investment scheme with your bank's infrastructure. Frank flipped through the first few pages. His smile disappeared. By the third document, his lips had thinned into a grim line. Oh my God, he muttered. All mortgage activity, business account registrations. All linked to their home IP address? Yes, Daniel confirmed. And all tied to a personal laptop registered under David Harris Michael's brother, used multiple times at this very bank to submit loan forms and upload documents. Frank closed the file and exhaled sharply. We'll need to escalate this to our internal legal department immediately. We'll freeze all related accounts. We've also submitted this package to the Oregon Financial Crimes Division, Sarah added. Their team will be in touch today. An hour later, 2 plainclothes officers arrived, Detective Ayers and Deputy Morales. They reviewed the folder, asked a few questions, and left the room to make a call. They're bringing them in, Sarah whispered beside me. Frank returned, straightening his tie. We've contacted your parents and your brother. Asked them to return to the branch to discuss inconsistencies in the loan records. They agreed. Of course they did. They still thought they were playing chess with pawns they controlled. But this time, they were walking into a courtroom. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Ruth entered first, wearing her church smile like armor. Dad followed, trying to look casual in a blazer too tight. David lagged behind, pale and quiet. Michael, Mom beamed. We're so glad you're here. We thought we should clear all this up before it gets out of hand. I didn't move. I simply pushed the file across the table. Read it. Dad glanced through the first few pages and froze. David didn't even reach for the folder, he just stared at his hands. What is this? Mom said, voice shaking now. Evidence, I said calmly. Every fraudulent act committed in my name. She looked up, eyes glassy. You're doing this? To your own family? I'm not doing anything. You already did. Before she could answer, Detective Ayers and Deputy Morales stepped forward. Thomas Harris. Ruth Harris, David Harris, Ayers said, badge flashing. You are under investigation for multiple counts of identity theft, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit felony-level wire fraud. We have sufficient cause to detain you for questioning. No, Mom shook her head, stepping back. This isn't real. He's angry. This is just family stuff, not crime. Ma'am, Morales said, gently but firmly, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say, Dad exploded. We are the victims here. He's turning his back on his own blood. I stood. You turned your back the moment you saw me as a safety net, not a son. David looked at me, then really looked. I didn't think you'd go this far. I almost laughed. Far? You stole my future and handed it out like candy. This is me holding back. As the officers led them out, my mom turned once more. You'll regret this. Families don't do this to each other. No, I said. Families don't have to. You chose to. The glass doors shut behind them. Just like that, the illusion of family cracked and finally shattered. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was packed. Lawyers, reporters, old neighbors who once attended our backyard barbecues. My name was on every legal filing, but I wasn't the one on trial, not anymore. When the prosecutor took the floor, the truth rolled out like thunder. Financial records, IP logs, victim testimonies, and surveillance footage, even copies of the forged emails from me. I took the stand. My voice didn't shake. I told the jury how I had spent years building a life on integrity, only to watch my family dismantle it like a pile of bricks. I showed them the impact on my finances, on my job, on my faith in people. When the judge read the verdict guilty on all counts, I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just breathed. 1 month later, I returned to Jefferson High. The students didn't know the details, but they knew I'd been through something. My district board had reviewed everything, and with full support from my staff and Sarah's documentation, they cleared me, fully reinstated. Then came something unexpected. A nonprofit approached me to help lead a program called Clear Ledger, a support network for victims of family-based financial abuse. Because people trust you, the director said. You lived it, and you survived. And I said yes, because surviving wasn't enough. Speaking up, that was the only real closure I'd ever get. Final line. Justice didn't come through revenge. It came through truth. And now, I use that truth to protect others who thought their last name meant safety until it didn't. Story 2. I'm Adam, 35, and until recently, I was married to a woman I genuinely thought I'd grow old with, Erica, 31. I won't lie, writing this is equal parts therapy and cautionary tale. I never imagined my life would end up on a forum like this, but here we are. Let's rewind. How it all started, I met Erica at a jazz and art street fair 5 years ago. We literally bumped into each other 3 times in one afternoon. The last time, we both laughed and joked that fate clearly wanted us to talk. She had this confident smile and an intelligent presence that pulled me in. Erica was sharp. Turns out, she'd just started teaching physics at a nearby university. Honestly, I was a little intimidated by her at first. She was well-read, articulate, and driven. But somehow, we clicked. I worked construction blue-collar, hands-on, long hours, and she respected that about me. Within 2 months, We were practically living together. Back then, she was still with someone else. I was the friend she vented to when her boyfriend was being emotionally immature or lacked depth. She'd show up at my place, frustrated, asking for advice. I knew it was messy, but when things escalated into physical intimacy, I let myself believe it was right. She broke up with him weeks later. In hindsight, I should have taken a beat to think about that. 9 months in, we were engaged. A year later, married. I loved her with my whole damn heart. I thought she'd be the mother of my kids. We both agreed we wanted to start a family early, and I was thrilled by the idea of having kids before 40. I'd grown up without a real father figure, and I wanted to rewrite that story. But then, nothing. When dreams began to crack, we tried for kids hard. By our second year of marriage, we'd done every test. I even went to the clinic myself without telling her, just to confirm I wasn't the issue. Every result came back normal, but Erica, she didn't seem too bothered. Her go-to phrase, "It'll happen when it's meant to." That might have been comforting if it wasn't said with the same energy you'd use to describe waiting in line at the DMV. Eventually, I stopped bringing it up. Every time I did, she made me feel like I was blaming her. So I just buried it and tried to be patient. I told myself to focus on us, that if we built a stronger bond, the rest would follow. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The woman I married started to drift emotionally, physically, even intellectually. She used to ask about my projects, remember the names of my coworkers, and retell student stories from her classes. We used to laugh about how she probably knew more about my crew than I did. But somewhere along the way, that version of her faded. I became background noise in her life. She stopped talking to me, stopped connecting. At night, she'd roll over in bed like I didn't exist. Physical intimacy became a rare, awkward event if it happened at all. Every time I tried to initiate something, I'd get shot down with some variation of, "I'm tired" or "I've got work to do." She wasn't just cold, she was indifferent. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. One-sided effort despite all that. I held on. I did most of the housework because she was always exhausted. I covered 70% of the bills because I wanted her to have space to focus on her career. I picked up groceries, cleaned, even cooked dinner most nights. I kept telling myself, this is just a rough patch. She'll come back around. So I made a massive effort for our 3rd anniversary. I booked reservations at a new rooftop restaurant she'd mentioned in passing, sent her reminders throughout the day, picked out a gift, even had a damn playlist ready for the car ride. She didn't show up, didn't even come home that night. Her excuse? She fell asleep at a coworker's house in the middle of a project, and just like that, something inside me snapped. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, my chest tight with suspicion and heartbreak. I'd given her everything, my time, my emotional labor, financial support, and she gave me apathy. The gut punch. At this point, I knew something was up, but I didn't want to accuse her blindly. So I did what I never imagined I'd do. I hired a private investigator. I also started checking her phone late at night when she was dead asleep. Nothing. Not a trace of anything inappropriate. No dating apps, no weird DMs, no suspicious contacts. Her laptop? Clean. It almost made me feel guilty for snooping. I was one phone call away from telling the pie to stand down, but I figured give it till Monday. Monday came, and the pie called me first. He had photos. Lots of them. Erica with a guy, holding hands, making out in her car, entering a hotel, eating at, you guessed it, the exact restaurant I'd booked for our anniversary. That was the moment my world collapsed. The guy? A student. A 22-year-old physics major named Tyler. One she used to gush about constantly. "Brightest student I've ever had," she once said. I thought she was just a proud mentor. Nope. She wasn't mentoring him, she was screwing him. My breaking point. I cried in my truck. I won't sugarcoat it. It felt like I'd been gutted. I sacrificed so much: my pride, my money, my mother's approval, She never liked Erica. All for this woman who casually blew up our marriage for a kid she had authority over. I wasn't done, though. I wanted more than pictures. I told the pie to keep digging. That same day, I found the final nail in the coffin. As I packed a small bag to clear my head at a hotel, I noticed something tucked under her folded clothes: birth control pills. We'd been trying to conceive for 2 years. TWOYEARS. Turns out, we weren't trying at all. She was taking pills the whole time. I sat on the floor holding those pills in my hand, sobbing like I hadn't in years. Not even the photos broke me like this did. She let me cry myself to sleep for months. Let me worry something was wrong with us. With her. With me. All the while she was secretly making sure she didn't get pregnant. That betrayal? It's the kind that changes a man. After I found the birth control pills, something inside me just shut off. I wasn't the same guy anymore. Not the one who made excuses for her, who tried to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. That moment, sitting on the floor with my hands shaking and those little blister packs in my palm, I stopped being the husband who loved her. I became the man who needed closure, and I wasn't leaving without it. Playing it cool, I didn't confront Erica that night. I didn't scream or throw things. I didn't even mention the pills. Instead, I told her I'd be heading out of town to visit my mom for the weekend. She didn't ask many questions, just gave me a tired, half-hearted safe trip. I think she was relieved. Probably looking forward to some uninterrupted time with her boy toy. What she didn't know was that I had every intention of catching them red-handed. I checked in at a motel a few miles out, kept my phone silent, and waited. The private investigator was already tailing her, and the moment he called to say she was heading home with Tyler, I got moving. This part, it felt surreal, like I was in someone else's body. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just pure clarity. Before I left the motel, I made one more call to a videographer. Yeah, I went that far. Showtime the first knew she wouldn't lock the front door. She never did when she thought I was away for a few days. I parked a block down, waited for about 15 minutes, then walked toward the house with the videographer a few steps behind me. The living room lights were dim. I could hear soft jazz playing, the kind of music we used to dance to when we still loved each other. It stung, but I had to keep moving. I pushed open the front door quietly, then crept down the hallway. Our bedroom door was closed, but not for long. One swift kick, and it flew open. There they were, Erica and Tyler, mid-act. And the look on their faces? I'll never forget it. Tyler jumped back like he'd touched a live wire. Erica screamed my name like I was the one who betrayed her. I didn't yell. I didn't even curse. I just stared at them while the videographer captured everything. Then I calmly told her to get the hell out of my house. Right there, in front of him. She tried pleading, crying, scrambling for clothes. She even tried to grab my arm at one point. I pushed her hand off and told her again. This time louder. Get out. She stormed out barefoot, screaming at me in the driveway. Tyler was already halfway down the block by then, pants barely zipped. The neighbors peeked out of their blinds, and I just stood there in the doorway, watching the circus I never wanted tickets to. But I wasn't done. The fallout begins. That same night, I sent everything: the pictures, the video, a full report to the university where Erica worked. I'd read enough posts to know what kind of violations this was. Professor, student, art relationship, ethics board nightmare. The next week, she was fired. Just like that. Tyler, expelled. His final year of undergrad, gone in a flash. You'd think I'd feel some kind of satisfaction after that. I didn't. Not really. It just made the emptiness feel louder. I wasn't happy. I was numb. Erica started blowing up my phone not long after. At first, it was denial, then rage, and finally, threats. She told me I ruined her life. And maybe I did. But she handed me the matches and poured the gasoline. I just lit the fuse. The final conversation. A few days later, we met in person so I could give her the divorce papers. She was quieter than I expected until she opened the envelope. Then she laughed. Not the laugh of someone amused, the laugh of someone who thinks they're untouchable. "You're seriously divorcing me?" she asked, still laughing. "Adam, you wouldn't have made it this far in life without me." I said nothing. She leaned back in the chair, looked me up and down like I was some pitiful charity case, and said, "You're just a construction guy. I was the best thing that ever happened to you." That was the moment I realized I'd been in love with a mask, a version of her that only existed in my imagination. She refused to sign the papers right then, said I was emotional, and that she was giving me time to think. I didn't push. I just walked away, let her think what she wanted. She still didn't know I'd found the birth control pills. She still didn't understand the kind of damage she'd done. I wasn't the same man she used to manipulate. After that last conversation with Erica, the one where she said I was too dumb for her, and acted like signing the divorce papers would be some kind of favor, I walked out with a weird kind of calm. It's hard to explain. It wasn't peace, exactly, but it was like something settled inside me. I'd spent the past year walking around with a weight in my chest, trying to make sense of the silence, the distance, the rejection, and suddenly, I could breathe again. She still hadn't signed the papers. Said she was going to give me time. Like I was confused. Like I didn't know what I wanted. Spoiler, I knew exactly what I wanted. Disappearing act. I went off grid for a few weeks. No social media, no texting friends back. Just work during the day. Silence at night. I needed space. I needed quiet. I needed to stop replaying that bedroom scene, or hearing her voice in my head telling me I was lucky to have her. I spent a lot of nights on the couch with a six-pack and no TV on, just thinking. And in that stillness, I started putting myself back together. I remembered who I was before her, not just a guy who paid bills and cooked meals, not just someone who let himself get walked on out of love. I remembered the version of me that laughed with his crew at lunch, who used to sing off key in the truck, who looked forward to building a future, not begging for scraps of affection. When I finally resurfaced, something had shifted. She noticed, too. When the narcissist breaks 3 weeks after I went silent, she showed up at my front door. I didn't recognize her at first. She looked empty, makeup smudged, clothes wrinkled, eyes tired. She had that look people get when they finally realize the mask isn't working anymore. She stood there on my porch, in the cold, arms crossed like she was trying to hug herself. "Adam," she said, voice shaking. "Please, just let me talk." I let her. She dropped to her knees the second she stepped inside, cried so hard she could barely get the words out, said she had nowhere to go, no job. Her car was about to be repossessed. She'd burned through her savings on Tyler, of all people. Fancy dinners, clothes, road trips, and guess what? He ghosted her. Right after she got fired, said she was too intense. You can't make this stuff up. The final confession. She said she had something to confess. Something big. I didn't get pregnant, she said, because I was taking birth control the whole time. I wasn't ready then, but I'm ready now. We can still be a family, Adam. We can fix this. I stared at her for a long time. Then I told her I already knew. The way her face twisted in that moment, I'll never forget it. Like every lie she'd ever told finally caught up to her in real time. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I cut her off. "You didn't just cheat on me," I said quietly. "You let me believe I was broken. You watched me blame myself, cry myself to sleep, pray every night for a child, while you took pills and went to bed with someone else." She didn't even deny it. She just cried harder. But I didn't cry with her. I didn't hug her. I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't. I told her to leave, and I meant it. If she didn't, I'd call the cops. That got her moving. She left that night with nothing but her car keys. No promises, no second chances. Just silence behind the slammed door. Picking up my own pieces since then. Life's been quiet. Not perfect, but peaceful. I finally filed the divorce myself and got it pushed through. She signed the papers probably because her lawyer told her she had no choice. She's out of my life now, for good. And me? I've started to rebuild. New routines, new projects at work. I even signed up for a hiking trip with some friends I hadn't seen in a while. The first real vacation I've taken in years. People keep asking if I'll ever date again, if I still want kids. The answer is yes. I still believe in love, still want a family, but I'm not rushing it this time. I've learned the hard way that the wrong person can delay the right life for years. I'll wait for someone who speaks love through action, not just words. Final thoughts. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I don't need pity. I'm telling it because someone out there needs to hear this. Love isn't supposed to feel like neglect. If you're begging for the bare minimum, if you're losing yourself trying to make it work, if your gut is screaming and you keep shushing it, listen. I stayed too long because I was afraid of starting over. But starting over with peace is better than staying with someone who turns your heart into a battlefield. Erica thought I wouldn't last a month without her. Funny thing is, I haven't just lasted. I've started to live. Story 3. They say some betrayals feel like a punch to the gut. But for me, it was more like getting hit by a truck while sipping coffee. 1 second, I was reviewing project code at work, and the next, I was staring at a Facebook post that would detonate my entire life. Starting fresh in Thailand with my girl, wishing peace to everyone as I close this chapter. That's how my husband of 24 years, Nathan, announced our divorce. Not a private conversation, not even a cold text, a public post with emojis. My name's Julia Kim. I'm a 49-year-old software engineer living in Seattle. At least I was. Before everything changed. It took me a full minute to process the words. And then came the reactions. Likes, shocked face emojis, comments pouring in from coworkers, extended family, old college friends. Some didn't even know we had issues. Hell, I wasn't even sure we did. At least not that morning. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just typed one word in the comments. Okay. But that okay wasn't surrender. It was a quiet promise. See, while Nathan thought he was blindsiding me, I'd been quietly preparing for months. I wasn't the helpless, wide-eyed woman he thought I was. I was a code breaker by trade, and I'd started debugging our marriage the moment things stopped compiling. It began with the little things. His sudden interest in our retirement portfolio, secretive weekend conferences, a new password on his phone, which he guarded like it contained nuclear launch codes. Then there was the project manager at his firm, Bella, who started popping up in way too many of his stories. My sister Mia, banker, realist, occasional wine-fueled psychic, told me straight, he's planning an exit. Don't let him make you the casualty. So I documented everything, every transfer, every expense flagged as business that was really a 5-star dinner in Napa. The first opened a hidden email account and slowly rerouted all our important financial documents there. Nathan never noticed. He always assumed tech stuff was my hobby. I consulted Savannah Tran, one of the top family lawyers in Washington. She looked over my file and simply said, "Oh, honey, he has no idea what's coming." And he didn't. Not even when I walked into our kitchen the next morning and found him sipping coffee like nothing had happened. "We need to talk," he said casually, as if he hadn't just detonated a social media grenade. "I've already started the process. I'll let you keep the house if you transfer my share of the 401k in joint investments." I poured myself coffee, calm, controlled, just like Savannah advised. "Bella's the girl you're starting fresh with, right?" I asked, not looking up. His cup paused halfway to his mouth. "How did you?" "Your Venmo history isn't as private as you think," I replied, sipping. "Neither is our iCloud storage. You should have logged out, by the way." He blinked. "You've been spying on me?" I set my cup down. "I've been documenting. Big difference." I slid a folder across the counter. Inside, bank records, flagged transactions, emails, and a notarized affidavit from Savannah. The expression on his face shifted confusion to alarm to panic in seconds. You changed the account passwords, he said, checking his phone frantically. Two-factor authentication, I said smoothly. You'd know how that works if you'd ever listened when I talked about my job. He stood up. You can't do this. That's my money too. Nope, I replied. It stopped being yours when you started funneling it into first-class flights and romantic getaways under the company account. You really thought no one would notice Bella's name on the billing address? He went pale. They're just receipts. They're evidence. And your firm's internal audit team just got all of it. You can thank my lawyer. The rest of that day was a blur of frantic calls to his lawyer, to our financial planner, to Bella, who, shocker, stopped answering his calls once the company caught wind. I watched it all unfold while packing an overnight bag. I was staying with Mia for the weekend. By nightfall, Nathan was unraveling faster than a corrupted codebase. His lawyer sent a nervous-sounding email requesting a meeting. Our shared bank accounts, frozen, retirement fund, locked down. And Bella? Turns out she was married. Her husband in Singapore filed for divorce the same day Nathan's company suspended him. At Mia's house, I sat with a glass of wine and watched the chaos through emails, texts, and Savannah's updates. It felt surreal, like watching someone else's downfall. But it was real, and it was only the beginning. Back at Mia's, everything finally slowed down. Or maybe it was me who slowed down. First time in months, I'd stopped running the numbers in my head like I was debugging a disaster. Now the disaster was happening, just not to me. Nathan, meanwhile, was falling apart. His confident little exit plan had a few gaps, like the fact that Thailand has an extradition treaty, or that Bella wasn't exactly the ride or die type. Apparently, when his company froze his access and launched an investigation, she bailed, blocked him on everything. That night, Savannah sent me a message. He's cornered. Let him spin. So I did. The texts started pouring in around midnight. We should talk. I didn't handle this the right way. I panicked. And then, you're ruining my life. I didn't reply. I just forwarded them to Savannah, who added them to our file. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail where he actually cried. Full-blown sobbing. The whole "please don't do this to me" act. Wild, considering he had zero problems broadcasting our divorce on Facebook like it was a travel announcement. I mean, who needs an actual breakup conversation when you've got Wi-Fi and a selfie stick? His lawyer reached out next, clearly rattled. Wanted to open a constructive dialogue. Apparently, Nathan hadn't mentioned he'd been slapped with a financial abuse claim, or that I had documented proof of every transfer, every company-funded date night, every lie. Let's just say the term forensic audit hit him like a thunderclap. And then came the job loss. Nathan's company didn't take kindly to him, misusing corporate funds, especially not for an affair with a married coworker. His access was revoked, his projects reassigned, and just like that, the man who once mocked my silly coding job was unemployed. He called me again that day. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. "Julia," he said, voice low, defeated. "I lost everything." "Not everything," I replied. "You still have your passport." "You wanted to travel, right?" "Please," he said. "Can we just undo all this?" I blinked. "You mean undo you announcing our divorce to 600 people and draining our accounts behind my back? Or undo me protecting myself from a guy who was 2 steps away from disappearing without a trace?" He was silent. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "You didn't deserve this." "You're right," I told him. "But I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to finish what you started." Click. It took him a few days to realize the full scope. I wasn't just freezing accounts. I was pulling the entire blueprint out from under him. Our house? Legally mine now. Retirement funds? Untouched. He tried to argue that he needed access for living expenses, but Savannah made sure the court saw every dollar he funneled into Bella's Singapore apartment. His assets? Tied up in litigation. His reputation? Circling the drain. And me? I went home, not to the life I had with Nathan, but to the house I rebuilt from the inside out. Mia came over that weekend, and we painted over the gray walls Nathan loved. We swapped furniture, rearranged bookshelves. Every little change felt like peeling him off the walls one layer at a time. But it wasn't just about erasing him. It was about reclaiming space, breathing again. I started sleeping better. I stopped triple checking our bank balances at midnight. I even went out with friends I hadn't seen in ages. It felt strange at first, like stepping into a version of my life I'd forgotten I could have. One with laughter, agency, peace. Then something unexpected happened. I got an email from a woman named Rachel. She worked for a local women's advocacy group and had heard about my story through Savannah, turns out. Good lawyers talk. She invited me to speak at a workshop on digital financial protection, helping women protect themselves from financial abuse in relationships. At first, I hesitated. I'm a software engineer, not a speaker. But then I thought about how close I came to losing everything. How many women do lose everything because they didn't have time to prepare or someone to warn them? So I said yes. I walked into that community center on a rainy Thursday night and told 8 women how I'd tracked transactions, secured accounts, backed up data, and used 2-factor authentication to lock down my life. I told them about Bella and Nathan, about the Facebook post, about the quiet rage that turned into a power move. They took notes. They asked questions. They cried. And when it was over, one woman hugged me and whispered, "You gave me a roadmap." That moment cracked something open in me. This wasn't just my story anymore, it was something bigger. By the end of the month, I launched a digital workshop series. Simple name, Reclaiming Control. The first few sessions were small, but word spread fast. Divorce lawyers started referring their clients. Therapists showed up with clients who'd been ghosted, drained, erased. And through all of it, I kept hearing the same thing. No one tells you how to protect yourself digitally. You don't even know you're vulnerable until it's too late. Nathan taught me that the hard way. Now I was teaching others the smart way. I didn't talk to him much after that. He stopped reaching out once his legal team realized they were outgunned. His new lawyer, some desperate, overworked solo practitioner, advised him to take the deal Savannah offered. I kept everything. He got minimal assets and probation after pleading out of corporate embezzlement charges. Oh, and Bella? She left town. Rumor has it her husband in Singapore pressed charges of his own. The karma train was practically running express. 6 months after it all went down, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a printed copy of Nathan's Facebook post, the one that started it all. Someone had written across the top in black Sharpie, "Some fresh starts don't go as planned." There was no signature, just the reminder. I tacked it to my bulletin board, next to thank you notes from workshop attendees. A reminder that rock bottom, his, mine, whoever's, can be repurposed. A year passed like a river after the rains quiet on the surface, but carrying everything downstream. My house didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like mine. The rooms echoed less. The silence stopped feeling heavy. I filled it with my own rhythm, coding in the mornings, workshop planning in the afternoons, candles burning in the evenings. Mia still visited on weekends, always with a bottle of wine and some story about the financial messes she was untangling at work. We laughed a lot more now, the kind of laughter that comes when you've both made it through the storm and still recognize each other on the other side. My workshops had grown. What started with a folding table and borrowed projector had become a full-fledged nonprofit called Code Safe. Women from all over, teachers, nurses, stay-at-home moms, even retirees logged in from every state. They came to learn how to protect their passwords, spot financial red flags, and build a digital safety net. And every time I spoke, I started with the same words: this isn't about revenge. It's about not disappearing. I wasn't trying to ruin anyone. I was trying to make sure no woman would ever again be left blinking at a Facebook post, wondering how it all slipped away. One day, After a virtual workshop, I got a message that stopped me. It was from Nathan's sister, Alina. We hadn't spoken in years. She distanced herself from him long before I did. Said he always played with fire and called it warmth. She told me she'd attended one of my webinars under a fake name, just to see for herself. Said she was proud. Said Nathan had always underestimated people he couldn't control. I just stared at the message for a while, heart caught somewhere between closure and something softer. Later that night, I walked out to the backyard, the garden Nathan never cared about, and sat under the maple tree that shaded the old stone bench. I thought about how full circle this had all come. When he left, Nathan thought he was writing the last line of our story. But endings aren't what we think they are. They're just doorways with better lighting on the other side. He was released from prison early, I heard, quietly. No job, no Bella, no home of his own. He'd tried emailing me once, months after the dust had settled. It was short. I don't know how to apologize. I never replied. Not because I hated him. I didn't. Not anymore. But because some doors, once closed, aren't meant to be opened again. They're meant to stay sealed as lessons. Instead, I kept moving forward. I signed a book deal, Digital Breadcrumbs, a woman's guide to reclaiming her power. It was a mix of my story and practical guides, written like I was sitting across from the reader, coffee in hand, saying, "I've been there. Here's what to do next." Savannah wrote the foreword. Mia helped me run the numbers. A woman from New Mexico who'd once messaged me in tears after finding out her husband emptied their joint savings. She became our digital outreach coordinator. Life has a way of folding pain into purpose if you let it. There's a story I heard once from a Lakota elder about a woman whose husband disappeared into the forest one day, never to return. She wandered for seasons, not to find him, but to find the pieces of herself he'd scattered like ashes behind him. By the time she returned, the village didn't recognize her. She had become her own fire. That story stayed with me, because I know now I didn't just survive Nathan's betrayal. I rebuilt, stronger, wiser, softer too, in the right places. One night, I stood in front of a room of 300 women at a National Women in Tech conference. They were all there to hear how to protect themselves in a digital age. But I didn't start with passwords or firewalls. I said this: sometimes you spend decades thinking you're just a supporting character in someone else's story. Then they leave, or betray you, or try to erase you, and in the ruins, you realize the story was always yours. That line got me a standing ovation. But more than that, it got tears. Nods. That quiet, collective hum of women realizing they weren't alone. And that's the truth, really. Nathan thought he was escaping to freedom, that Thailand would be his reset button. But me? I didn't need to leave the country. I didn't need a new name or a new partner to start over. All I needed was the truth, a plan, and the guts to keep walking even when it hurt. He got a flight to nowhere. I got a life with purpose. Last week, I cleaned out the last box from the attic. Inside was a photo album, our wedding, our first house, a blurry shot from Maui where he was smiling, and I was just learning how to. I closed the album, not with bitterness, but with peace. Some people start over by running. Others, like me, start over by staying and making the ground under their feet strong enough to never collapse again. This was never his story. It was always mine. And now, I write every word,